Well, hey, friends, welcome to the Everyday Mulemanship Podcast. I'm Ty Evans. Thank you so much for being here today. It is the best day ever, for me at least, and I hope it is for you. Uh, we got a special guest today, a friend of mine, Autumn Bowen. Um, Her mother, Christina Bailey, was on the podcast a little while back. You guys have heard from her before. And Autumn is just as amazing as her mother. She is so cool. I'm really excited to talk to her about the parallels of dog training and mule training. Autumn is one of the best dog trainers you're ever going to find. She's amazing, very talented, and she knows how to work hard to get these things right. So I can't wait to talk to Autumn and get to know a little bit more about her and about her program with the dogs and how she relates this to her work with her mules because she rides with her mom often. She gets to go out on the horses and the mules every now and again. So, anyways, that'll be fun to visit with her. Looking forward to it. We'd love it if you leave us a review, especially if you're listening on Apple or Spotify. I would be so grateful if you would leave 5 stars and let me know what you think of the show. Let me know how you are liking these guests and how you like these episodes. Your feedback is very much appreciated. Also, please share this episode. If you're on social media, I'd be so grateful to you if you would share these episodes. Be sure to tag me, Ty Evans or TS Mules, on your social media posts so I can see those. I'm very grateful for that. Also, a big thanks to our sponsors that make these episodes free for you to listen to. We got Roman Home Tents. If you're looking for a awesome tent to take hunting, camping, packing, fishing, all the good things, you need a Roman Home. Also, a big thanks to Colt Saddlery. He builds amazing saddles. I put a lot of miles on the saddle he built for me. I'm loving it. It's a great saddle, and he'll build you something good that'll fit your mule and get you down the trail good. So, very grateful to Colt and his support for this podcast. Also, Mules and More magazine, along with Western Mule magazine, they've been supporting us for a long time. Diamond W Enterprises, my buddy Kevin Wright there in Fountain Green, he has a great jack, and springtime is right around the corner. Time to get those mares bred. Look them up. Diamond W Enterprises on Facebook. And a big thanks to Boyd Ranch Mule Days for all their support for this podcast and for putting on such a wonderful event. We can't wait to get down there. And with that, let's get to Autumn. Okay, pal, we're good to go. Thank you so much
Alrighty.
for doing this, Autumn.
Yeah, of course. We're very excited
S-
to be
So
here.
you come from a family of royalty because everybody knows your mother. Um,
Yeah, it's true.
Christina Bailey, she's been on the podcast I think twice. And because she's around me so much, I've used her for examples for the better and for the worse. So
Yep.
everybody knows your mom, and if they don't, they should because your mom is way cool.
Yeah,
Um,
super cool lady. Really great role model. Well, a little bit of pressure to be Christina Bailey's daughter in this kind of circle.
hey, but you're living up to it good because like mother, like daughter, you are way awesome and doing some super cool things, and that's why I
Thanks.
wanted to get you on here because your talents with the dogs especially is really cool, and there's so many parallels
Hmm.
with dogs and mules and horses, but there's also a lot of differences.
Yep.
I meet a lot of people that say, "Well, I've trained dogs, and so training a mule must not be too much different." And although I would agree with the principles are the same, obviously a lot of the methods and techniques are very different.
Yep.
We're dealing with a predator, and we're dealing with a prey animal, so we got
Hmm.
a lot of differences there. So we're gonna get into a bunch of that, but before we do, Autumn, for some of our listeners that don't know you or your awesome mama, um, take a minute and introduce yourself and tell them what you're up to and where you're from, and
Yeah.
yeah, let's talk about your journey a little bit.
Yeah. So I started I'm from Pennsylvania, where my mom still lives there. Um, and I was the horse crazy kid in the family, and how we got into it, because I was just as many little girls are, obsessed with horses and uh, convinced my mom somehow when I was a kid to get into it, and we really took off with it. We just kind of took that and ran with it. Um, and now I've been in horses, or had been in horses for, well, most of my life, like 15, 20 years. Yeah, started when I was a real little kid, and now I was into that for quite a while, and then I started thinking about dogs. I worked on a horse farm professionally for a couple years, and decided I didn't really want to do that anymore. It's just a lot of work, and it's kind of soured me to it. Um, because of, different things. Um, Tried dogs full time. I worked at our friend Christy Kovner's
Mhm.
kennel for a while. Um, that was super cool and taught me that I could do dogs full time. Um, so I got into it. Now I'm up in Northern Virginia working with dogs full time professionally all day long. Um, and it's just awesome. It's my dream job, and really really lucky to have found, I think, my calling in life, and what I want to do for the rest of it, I think.
Well, you're definitely super good at it.
Thanks.
Which leads me to remind you, you need to post more videos, because
Yeah.
I love your dog training videos and good old Finn on
Yeah, he's the
there.
best.
It's fun watching Finn again. That's your awesome dog.
Yeah, super
But
cool dog. He's he's over there. He's over there somewhere.
hanging
He's
out.
yeah, just a totally rock star dog. People don't know my dog. He's 10 years old. We've been working with each other since he was a baby. Um, and he's done different competitions and stuff, rally obedience. People know what that is. He's got his CGC all the way up to the top level, and now competing in uh, beginner novice obedience competition. Is pretty cool guy.
Heck yeah, he's way cool.
Yeah. But I'm not good at the social media stuff. I That's my goal for 2025, is to get a little bit better at that.
Hey, you know what? Social media is, I have a love-hate relationship with it. I hate how it can suck you in and you waste way too much time.
Yeah. Oh
Way
yeah,
too
I'm
much
on it all
time.
the time.
Yeah, but but at the other hand, it's like, it's the modern day phone book. Like
Yeah.
what my parents had growing up, they had a big old fat phone book, and every year it was kind of cool to get the new phone book, right? Like,
Yeah.
okay, cool. We got the updated numbers, and that was like the thing for them. And now,
Right.
I mean, we don't phone books aren't even a thing anymore.
No, we
It's
don't use
it's
them.
it's social media, and that's kind of the way people can connect. Well, I like it
Yeah.
because like I only get to see you maybe once or twice a year, but if I can see you on there, it's pretty cool to keep up with your stuff. And
Yeah. I
I've
work
always,
for the Dog Wizard. So if you look on
Mhm.
the Dog Wizard Chantilly or the Dog Wizard Georgetown, or DC, you might see me on there every once in a while. But um, yeah, I mean, social media is a huge part of growing like a training business, like, um, working with animals. You first have to find the people and get
Mhm.
them to see that you have some value. And social media is a great way to do that, but it's a lot of work.
Yeah, well, it's like me, I realize what I enjoy most is actually making the content, like doing the thing. Like,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
like you. Well, you like working with a dog. You don't want to do all this other crap.
Yeah, I don't
And
wanna come home and have to edit the video.
yeah, yeah, that's how I am. So luckily I have a Sky. So Sky
Yeah,
does all
there you go.
that stuff. She's my wife, she's the best. She does all that stuff. I just get to have all the fun and she has to do all the work. So
Yeah, and she's good at it too.
she's good at social media. Yeah,
Yeah.
we're in a process right now. She's trying to step back from all the other parts of the business besides just the social media.
Mm,
So when people ask about a clinic, they'll usually send her a message. She's like, "Nope, talk to Ty." And they'll ask her questions because I don't know, maybe they're scared to send me a question.
yeah.
I don't know. There's a lot of people I've told that, well,
They
I'm
think
too
you're too
scared.
busy.
Yeah, I'm too scared to send Ty questions. She's like, "That's his job. That's what he does." she's in there trying to do homeschool with the girls, and she's getting these messages. She's like, no, I don't know. Send
Yeah.
Ty the messages. So yeah, it's handy. But so I've always been fascinated with the dog stuff, Autumn. So around here, um, sheepdogs are the big deal. Like we got
Mhm.
like this is Utah is border collie country, okay? Just because all the sheep, and there's a lot of guys that use them on cattle too. But right where I'm at, tons of stuff working with the sheep,
Yeah.
and I have it lined up to talk with Morgan Mickle. Morgan Mickle's a big sheep rancher here, and I mean, they got more dogs than I mean, I can count. They have so many dogs, and so I'm going to talk to him
Yeah.
about the sheepdog stuff. But I wanted to dive into a lot of the dynamics of working with the dogs and your experience because you've been around me a ton and working with your horses a ton. And I want to talk about the relationships with the dogs and the horses, the mules and stuff.
Sure.
Um, something you've been,
Yeah.
I was going through your Facebook. Speaking of social media, I was going through it this morning just to see if there's anything else that I wanted to, bring up or talk about. And you had multiple posts in there about the word you've heard me use so much, feel.
Mhm.
Um, FEEL, not PHIL. So we're talking about the thing, not the person, right? But that feel, and that's one of the hardest things. And you've heard me stagger and stammer, just in front of so many people trying to describe what feel is. And I still
Yeah.
can't really describe it. It's something that, well, you got to
You
feel,
feel.
you
Yeah.
know, like it's that connection. And I think people could, if we, and this is part of why I wanted you to come on, because I feel like if we could help people see it within the dogs, it'd be easier to see within the horses because
Mhm.
everybody, well, almost everybody, all the good people have connected with dogs in some way, you know,
Right.
um, had
Yeah.
that feel that whatever that relationship is, but had that feel with a dog. We all have our favorite dogs that we grew up with or whatever, and then but you've taken that to another level with the work you've done. So, anyways, Autumn, talk to me about that. Like, how are you? How are you working on this whole field business with the dogs?
Yeah. So I work most of my work I'm doing with people. So like you, I'm coaching most of the time. I'm really working
Right.
with people. I get to see the dogs and I get to work with the dog a little bit while I'm there, but I'm coaching the people. So I really have struggled with the same thing, trying to define what feel is and how to find it. And uh, the the best way I can get people to feel it is by feeling it on me holding the end of the leash and them holding the other end of the leash. And I do this exercise. I have them close their eyes and follow the leash pressure. If I go too hard, they start bracing back up, just like a dog or a horse would if you're trying to pull them along. And if I just go real soft, they'll follow along with me. And it's the same thing from either animal. If you start getting greedy and you're taking too much too fast, they're saying, "Hey, I don't know what you're after here, but I feel in my bones I should resist this. It's too much." So I have people really slow down, feel, even close your eyes and see if you can notice when they give and then you give. Just like everything, it's so similar to everything that you're teaching in the clinics of pull and slack, pull and slack, pull and slack.
Yeah.
We got to give them that good deal so that they can take it and always offer it to them and not just say, now you're coming along. Because we can pull dogs along. It's a big difference between dogs and mules. You can't really, if the mule doesn't want to go, you can't really pull him along. You can kind of get away with pulling the dog, which becomes a big problem um, in that. And on the flip side, dog can get away with pulling you around too a little bit better
Yeah.
than a mule, right?
Yep. Yeah. People don't like because it doesn't, it's not if a mule's dragging you, it's dangerous. Like, okay, you
Yeah,
you, you could die. Like you could die of this. The dog is just kind of like annoying.
right.
It's just annoying. And
Oh, he's
sometimes,
over there pulling me around, and
yeah, I guess they could get annoyed enough to actually do something about
yeah,
it. But
it's easy to let
um
that slide.
we do a clinic in Selah, Washington, and the host up there, her name's Kendra Banduck, and she's always making games for us for potluck night, and you've been to lots of potluck nights.
Hmm.
So last year she had a game where she put up a bunch of obstacles, like a little mini trail course, and instead of taking the mules through it, we paired up, and one person was the quote rider or the director, and the other person was the mule. So the mules, the human mules, they had to go out of the barn, right? They couldn't see the trail course until they got there, and they didn't know the rules um,
Ah,
until they got. Well, in fact, they never did know the rules because nobody explained it to them. So they're
yeah.
they're just like coming into this obstacle course just blind. They haven't prepared for it. They don't know the rules, nothing. And we weren't allowed to talk to the mule, right? We weren't allowed to say anything to them other than if we wanted to, cluck or kiss or, you know, or say,
Ah,
whoa, something like that. We could say that, but no real words. And um Sky, me and Sky partnered up, and she was the mule, and she said it was there were moments when there was no communication, like the rain was maybe dead, like there was no feel like we're talking about there,
sure.
to where she was kind of confused. So she had to basically anticipate the obstacles. Like, well, it looks like we're supposed to do this, so they kind of anticipate it.
Yeah.
And then there are other teammates, together that, were pulling and yanking and smacking, and, like it was really funny. It was actually a really funny event. We should do it at one of our clinics on the East Coast because it was super fun. But, when you start to put yourself in like the mule's position or the dog's position, it makes a difference. So you doing that with your clients, with your students, putting them
Yeah.
on the end of the leash and feeling that. Because yeah, you could um, I definitely know what you're saying about, you're pulling too much, and that actually it naturally causes resistance in mules, dogs,
Yeah.
humans.
So
It,
opposition reflex. It's
it's
very real. It's in us, it's in dogs, it's probably in birds too.
yeah, yeah. It just yeah they want to pose that like you're saying.
Yeah. You
On the
want to
other
keep
end of this,
yourself upright, so you have to
yeah,
you got to pull back on that.
on the other end of the spectrum, if there's no feel in there, if it's kind of a limp noodle, like a limp leash, like nothing going on, and we could talk about the deeper connections there because I think there's deeper connections. You don't have to have I don't believe you have to have contact on the leash or contact on a mule's rein for that connection, that feel either.
Yeah.
So talk about that end of the spectrum. So we know we shouldn't be dragging on the dog and
Right.
on the mules, but what about the other end? Like, how do they know what we want?
So there's a real interesting difference between the the dog, the predator, and the mule, the horse, the prey. And well, people think of it as this black or white, but it's really a spectrum. The
Mhm.
mule is maybe a little bit more towards the slightly more towards the predator side than a horse is, which is just going to run. Mule may be more apt to fight a little bit, but there's a big difference in that the dog is forward oriented. He's thinking from forward. He's driving from forward. You cannot drive a dog with a flag like you would a mule or a horse. You could, but it would be a more advanced skill. It doesn't really make sense to him. Whereas with a horse, that makes the most sense to them. A dog, what makes the most sense to them is a reward based system. And I think this is where people trying to clicker train horses get in a bind. It's because you can clicker train a horse, you can clicker train a mule, but it's a whole lot of work. And it's more work than if you would apply pressure safely and in a clear way, clear and firm and kind. Um, Whereas with a dog, the reward makes the most sense, and then you have to teach them about the pressure. That's not as innate for them. So it's kind of this flip flop of their brains. The dog is more forward, the horse is more go away, right? So as much as we're doing the same thing with the reins as we do with a dog in, for example, in heel position. Dog gets out of heel position, you cue with the leash to get back into the position, like you would with a horse getting out of what we call our centeredness box. If they get out of the position, we cue them back in, but eventually they're gonna maybe they test that again and again and again, and they keep getting out of the box, just like in heel. We then have to do something else. So maybe then I'll roll the hinds, or I'll move the front over, or maybe then I'll do a turn around with the dogs. They hit the end of the leash, go, ooh, oops, I missed it, missed you, and come back with me. Because you can't, if you just tap, 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 you're going to dull the animal out just the same as you would with maybe your spur or your rein cue on the mule. You have to find the feel by amping that stuff up in a way that's clear to them, uh, and doing a different kind of movement that makes it more clear, so that then your more subtle cue can be more powerful. And then we fade that away. And maybe after the dog understands, "Okay, this is what happens when I get out of this position," I can start rewarding the position before they make the mistake. And we do the same thing with horses by rewarding them by leaving them alone. That's very powerful for them. With a dog, you leave him alone for too long, he's going to find something else to do. Right? They find that very difficult to do, to just sit still, and that is actually a lot of what I do in our training. Of course, horses do too, but when they're out in the field, they're kind of just standing around. If a dog is just at home, maybe he's sleeping, but if he's not sleeping, he's walking around just trying to find something to do, right? Um, so I reward the dog in the position that he's supposed to be in to really reinforce to him that's correct. That second, that moment is right. And here's something on top of me leaving you alone, because you understand this even better. If I reward a horse or equine in that moment, maybe they'll get it, or maybe they'll just be focused only on the food for the
Yeah.
rest of the training session, right? Uh,
That's a great comment right there. Because the treat thing is probably a topic I deal with every single clinic, and you've heard me
mhm,
talk about it so many times that with the horse or the mule, it becomes th three things. There's you, and then there's the mule, and then there's the treat. It's not, it's really hard to make a lot of progress rewarding that way. And I'm not saying you can't, because I've seen it. I've seen plenty of people that they do have, this treat based program, like you're saying, a lot of the clicker training, for sure. For sure. I mean, I'm not telling people that it doesn't work, because it does, and there's plenty of evidence that it does. The difference that we're talking about here is how it works and the results that you're going to derive from that effort.
yeah.
That like you're saying, I've seen it so many times. Somebody works through something difficult with their mule, and maybe it was challenging for the mule to figure out. They finally figured it out, and the person quit, which is good, and they released, which is good, and the mule found relief, which is good. But then they interrupted the whole thing and handed him a treat, and it messed up the whole thing.
Uh-huh.
And I wish I could just, like, okay, I wish we had a movie of the mule's brain right at that moment, so that they could see all the chemicals flowing, and then all of a sudden shut it off and redirected.
Yeah.
And luckily, we have some cool science that's being developed through this. The problem with some of the sciences that I'm seeing right now, the studies that I'm seeing that come through, is it's either one or the other. We have the people that are in the treat tribe, call it, right?
Mhm.
That they want their science about how the treats work. Okay, and they'll show their evidences for why the treats work. Cool. And then you have people on the other in the other camp, they're like anti-treat, and they're showing how their stuff works, which is cool. But there's not the combination showing what happens when you mix this, do a little bit of both. And anyway, so I like that
Right.
comment you made, and you're describing it so well. But the dogs being so forward thinking, that reward is, I mean, that's a huge part of their learning.
Right. Yeah. And you think about everything that they're wired to do is go forward, go forward, go forward, keep trying, be tenacious, kill the deer, keep chasing
Mhm.
it down until you get the reward of the meat in your mouth at the end, right?
Yeah.
The horse and the mule don't really work that way. They
They're
wander
wired
around.
to yeah, they're wired to go away from that,
Yeah,
and as soon as they're out of that danger, pressure's gone, life is good.
yeah,
Like, that's
exactly.
so this is where, this is such good stuff, Autumn, because this is the stuff I'm trying to tell people, because I get such a crossover between people that, well, yeah, I've worked with dogs, and so now I'm trying to work with mules, but how come my mule running me over?
Mhm.
And I haven't heard much on the other end. I'm sure there's some kind of spectrum, like, for me, it's funny because, Sky's dog Molly, everybody that follows Sky knows Molly. She posts more about
Uh-huh.
Molly than the rest of her family. And it's funny though, like I'll just goof around, I'll grab Molly and I'll try to halter drive her around me, and it's just funny because you're talking about how, the driving part, the dogs do have a slight level of drive, like, if the neighbor's dog comes over, get out of here, right? And you
Right,
could
yeah,
scare them
yeah.
off, and they do have that level of flight.
Yeah, there's a real difference there though, right? Like when
Yeah,
you're applying pressure to a horse, you can do it in a way, and I'll keep saying horse because that's my thing.
yeah, you're good. It's good.
uh, you can apply pressure to a horse in a way that's like doesn't get them too far up and doesn't
Yeah.
create an emotional response. But in a dog, if to get some kind of flight, you have to bring that emotion up, and you get a flighty dog a little insecure,
They tuck their tail and
right?
ears, and they hunch down, and they're legitimately scared.
Right.
That's yeah.
And then
Whereas
the you can teach a drive, right? But it's the same advanced skill as we were just talking about in clicker training, like horses. That's a really, really, really advanced skill at the end of your training, that you can touch here maybe, and the dog moves away just a little bit. Um, there's a real cool dog trainer. Um, Ghoul Cool is it's a she's I think Scandinavian or something, and she has this Malinois that will be focused looking away from her, and she just taps a leg with a stick from behind the dog, and the dog will pick its back leg up and hold it there. And then she might touch the front leg, and the dog picks that leg up. And then he's balancing on two legs facing away
yeah,
from her. That is a really, really, really advanced skill, that dog understands this tap means this. Um, and that
yeah,
takes
and that
so much
is
longer.
yeah, that's like what we're doing with the mules and horses, where we apply pressure with our leg. We use the word pressure. Some people don't like that, but I whatever pressure.
Yeah, pressure.
So first gear, for example, means my leg is forward. And that means I want to move the front end of the mule one way or the other. And that mule is going to go away from my leg, you
Hmm.
know. And it's so easy for them to figure that out. But with the dogs, like you're saying, that's a much more advanced thing for them to, oh, you touch that leg, now move away from that.
Yeah. You
And
touch them like that, and they're like, "Oh, I'll lean into you. Hey, buddy, what's going on?
yeah.
Are you gonna pet me?" That's way harder for them to get. And then yeah, once you start saying, well, no, this means something, like you might with a mule who wants to lean into you. No, get away from me. You apply
Mhm.
a little more pressure. That's just going to scare your dog off and get him a little emotional. I have seen uh, it go the other way with people who have worked with horses and mules or mules, whatever, for most of their life, and now they're getting into dogs, or people who are mostly horse people and they happen to have a dog. Um, and so, you can kind of tell if somebody's a dog person who happens to have a horse, or a mule person who happens to have a dog. Uh,
Yeah.
and the difference is very clear in the dog's behavior. Um, there, I find that for some reason, a lot of horse people don't hold their dogs to the same standard that they hold their equines to. And
Yeah.
probably
Guilty.
yeah.
Yeah, you're talking about me.
I'm talking about a lot of people. When
Yeah.
I come to
Here.
your clinics and stuff, people are, "Can you train my dog?" Well, you wanna learn? Do you want, are you
Mhm.
gonna do this stuff or not? Probably not.
Yeah, it's hard. It is really hard to, for reals, It's the same
Yeah.
thing with, like for us. So, here I am preaching and teaching about all this mulemanship stuff, and then, Molly's just running around. How
Sure.
she's having a party. My kids are running around having a party, and so
Yeah.
yeah, it's just like, all right, yeah, I get it. But no, you're right that well, I think I don't know what it is. Maybe it's the different emotional attachment people get with
Mhm.
dogs. Um, man's best friend type thing,
Yeah,
where it's all about being friends first, you know.
right. And they live with
Um,
us all the time, so they become way better at communicating with us really subtly,
mm,
but that kind of communication tends to fall apart outside of the home if you guys are not clued in together that you mean something to them,
yeah.
that, oh, you're just my buddy that I can kind of run over and do whatever I want with. I want to go see that dog over there. You're coming with me. I'm going to take you over there. Uh, and we can't, again, like a horse is a way bigger animal. We can't just allow them to do that to us. That's dangerous. Whereas, uh, Jane, or I did not mean our friend Jane, but it's just any lady with her little dog. Um, okay, they want to go over there. Well, I'll let them go over and see. In the dog's mind, you've just kind of let yourself be run over. Um, but yeah, they're so good at reading our cues, and they've actually evolved from they came from wolves, but dogs have evolved and changed, literally changed the muscle structure in their faces to better uh, show us their emotions. They have more facial muscles in their face than wolves do to better communicate
Mm.
with us, which is very, very cool. Um, and so it really deepens, yeah, that bond between us, and that's really awesome. But I
Yeah, well,
think that people would sorry, uh, I
you're good.
think that people would find a way better relationship with their dog if they did some kind of training together and got some even better communication going with their buddy.
Yeah, well, it's that everybody wants a relationship, and I've talked about this on a lot of my episodes on this podcast. You've heard me talk about it in the clinics a million times. But people want the relationship. They're just going down the wrong road to get it.
Mhm.
Like, and it's probably this is probably some very similar stuff with the dogs and the horses and mules. Is a lot of people think, and I kind of like what I said earlier, like, people want to be friends first. Like let's be
Yeah.
friends now. I something I'll bring up. I had Warwick Schiller on my podcast a little while back, and he, a big thing that we talked about was relationship before horsemanship. But relationship before horsemanship doesn't necessarily mean just be buddies and pals and hang out together. There needs to be a different level of I guess different level of that that communication between one another. It's not just hanging out. It's not
Mhm.
just because I think the mules and the dogs are similar. That if you're just around them and you just are familiar to them, and there's no direction, um, you kinda just become familiar with one another.
Yeah.
And so then when finally you do tell the dog or the mule, you need to do something, you know, um, the UPS guy comes to the door and your dog's barking, your dog's like, "You don't tell me to shut up." You're like, like, "You're
Yeah.
not telling me to be quiet."
Yeah.
Like, "Well, who are you?" You know?
Or
Uh,
even, I don't know what that means. You're making a lot of
yeah.
noise. I'm making a lot of noise. We're barking at each other. This is awesome.
Yeah, good
Right?
point. Yeah, we're know? Together. Here we go.
Yeah.
And, so that relationship side that I think people they do want, and so do I. I mean, I if I wasn't into the relationship side with these mules and these dogs, we'd just buy a four-wheeler or golf cart,
Yeah.
cheaper to buy
Just
and
go.
cheaper to feed nowadays, you know?
Uh-huh.
So, but it's the relationship that really matters. So how like with the dogs, how can people build that relationship? You're talking about working with them and doing stuff. Talk about what happens when people do that, Autumn. Like when people actually work with their dog, ask them some questions, there's rewards found. What
Yeah.
makes that connection?
So it's a great point that people want that relationship first. And in mules, it creates, a difference in leadership, that the mule starts to take charge a little bit because he feels like he has to take care of himself. And then the same thing happens with dogs. I see a lot of very anxious dogs with owners who just want to be best pals and let the dog have whatever he wants because it's his best buddy. And I want him to like me, I want him to love me, so I will give him whatever he wants, let him do what he pleases. But it creates a lot of behavioral issues because the dog feels like he's got to make these decisions. And
There
um,
it is, right
you
there.
know uh, because nobody's making them for him, nobody's guiding him, so he's going to make up his own kind of rules, and that's how he thinks the world works. um, a lot of the stuff that I do with owners is, you don't have to be the alpha. I don't believe in the alpha sort of theory stuff. I'm not submitting my dog, but I want to be a good friend and a good guardian for the dog by showing him what the world is like and how to appropriately react to that, and also showing him that I got his back. You know, when we were talking about Molly last time I saw you, about her getting a little bit snippy with dogs at clinics and stuff. And I was talking to Sky and saying, "Hey, if she's uncomfortable, you could tell she's if she you can tell she's uncomfortable because you guys get along and you know her pretty well. Move that other dog out of her way so that she doesn't have to do that. You can step in there and let the other dog know." People don't think that they can do that because they think they're being rude and they're thinking of what the other owner might think. But think of your dog and the position that you're putting them in. Um, and just that will really boost your relationship with your animal. Um, Even if you don't have an anxious dog yet, you see that they're getting a little uncomfortable, move the other dog out. Or if you see that another dog your dog is interacting with is getting uncomfortable, move your dog away, because that will set up him for success in life because he knows what's appropriate and what's not. And nobody has to be mean about it or snap at him to correct him. You just gently show him. Now, there are times that the dog does not take a hint, and I will let them just figure that out, and get a natural consequence there. But ideally, I'm redirecting the dog, saying, "No, no, no, that's enough. Come over here. Let's hang out over here. Let's do something together, so that you don't have to get the punishment that I see is going to come from that
Mhm.
other dog there." But working with your dog and building that relationship is not only about just getting a better friend, like a better behaved dog, getting a better centered dog, uh, just like in the mules, emotionally centered. He knows that there's boundaries in the home. He knows what he's allowed to do and what he's not allowed to do. And just like a kid that doesn't have any rules and is running all over the place, or maybe they're out all night as teenagers and whatever, uh, and just allowed to run amok, those kids they don't feel centered. In the same way that too strict will make you not feel centered either, because you don't know what, or confused about what is allowed and what's not. Too much freedom, especially for a dog um, that we've kind of developed to be a follower, is just a recipe for not having a good time.
Yeah.
And,
When
yeah.
when you were talking about stepping in for your dog when they're faced with something that they're uncomfortable with, That reminds me, like in our cow working classes, um, well, if I see a mule that is really uncomfortable with the cattle, a lot of times and this depends on the gentleness of the cattle too. What I'm about to say, okay, what I'm about to say, I'm not gonna have somebody get off in a bunch of wild cattle, okay, but
Yeah.
if if the situation permits itself and the mule is nervous about the cattle, I'll have the rider get off and lead the mule into the cattle, moving the cattle away themselves. So they're leading their mule in
Mm,
there. If they need to grab a flag or whatever to, shoo the cattle away, that's fine. But there's a sense of safety that comes from things like that, even with the equine. And a lot of people that, like we were talking earlier about, that just want to be pals and buddies and don't want to, they think it's important to just be the friend and not discipline. Um, well, I think what happens is the mule doesn't ever feel any safety, doesn't feel that
yeah.
confidence. And you've heard me talk about leadership so many times, and so has everybody else on this podcast, because that's what all this is about. And the leadership that we teach is not dictatorship.
Right.
It's not the alpha leadership, but I think, there's such a stigma with the word leadership, historically thinking, well, I'm the boss. I'm the alpha. I'm in
Right.
charge. That's not the leadership I'm talking about. Like the leadership with horses, for example, in a wild atmosphere, these wild Mustangs. Uh, whenever the it's usually a herd mare. It's always you ladies that are in charge. Whenever the herd mare wants to move the herd somewhere, she will, and she'll get it done. She'll move the herd, but we need to consider why they move the herd. They move the herd in that natural setting to go to safety. So maybe there's a predator, mountain lions, coyotes, wolves, whatever. Or it might even be simply to go to better grazing. It might be to go to water. But whenever that herd leader, I don't say herd alpha, but the herd leader moves the herd, it's always towards something that leads to comfort, something good. I think people get mixed up with leadership because of our domestic way of keeping the horses. We keep them in a paddock together and we throw them hay twice a day or whatever. Well, yeah, they're gonna have a good old fight and there's gonna be some teeth and some kicking, right?
Yeah.
And I think
Sure.
people think that leadership in horsemanship is, well, I'm going to move you just like that other herd leader moves that horse off the hay. I'm in charge. You get off the hay because I want that hay. And I actually used to buy into that. I used to think that until I paid more attention. And what I've now learned is actually the one that causes the most bickering in the herd, the one that does the most fighting and all that stuff, is actually the least confident in the whole herd.
Mhm.
They're the ones that you go out on the trail and they're freaking scared of every bush and boogeyman out there.
Yep.
The one that's
That's very true.
quiet, the one that's quiet that actually just like, all right, gets out of the way and fades off is actually the most confident. Swayze's mule Tina. You've seen old Tina lots of
Mhm.
times. Okay, that is our true herd leader. And I've learned this by observation. She will stay out of the drama during feeding time. She's not part of the drama, no big deal. She'll just come in there and get a bite when she can. It's usually the young little punks that are fighting. But what's interesting is I can pull out any of those punks out of the herd. The rest of the herd doesn't care. I pulled Tina out of the herd and they're all hollering for Tina. They're like, "Oh, Tina, where'd you go?" And that's taught me quite a bit. But that herd leadership in it with the equines is actually the one that can have that confidence, that can lead to comfort. And I'm hearing a little bit of that with the dog stuff you're talking about.
Yeah, for sure. That's such a good point that the Mustang herd leader moves them for a reason, and she's driving them away because there's better stuff over there, or we're moving away from something that's important. Um, and there's not so there are wild dogs, but you know, talking about wolves, the alpha, what we call alphas, this theory's been debunked, but I'll use alpha just for shortness.
Okay.
Um, the alpha female, which is usually the mother of the pack, basically.
Again, you ladies always ruling
Yeah,
those
always.
things.
It usually is the female. Um, will move the pack not by driving them away like like a horse will, that she'll, circle around the herd and get everybody riled up to move them. She'll just walk away, and everybody will go, What's she doing? Okay, well, she's going a little bit too far away. We better go catch up to her."
Mhm.
And a lot of that comes out in dog training too. When you have a good relationship, good leadership with your dog, they want to come with you. Uh, there's a fine line there between separation anxiety and wanting to be with you because you're a good leader. The separation anxiety part of it points to a less centered animal that doesn't feel good unless he's right under your nose, probably because you're paying a little too much attention to him, right? Where if you just left him alone most of the time, some of the time, and then you walked away, he might feel a little bit, okay about that. But yeah, that's such a good point about the the Mustang herd. She's moving him for for a reason. She's not just being moving him because she can.
Well, and to kind of go along with how you're talking about the wolves too, um, usually that Mustang won't necessarily drive like you would see in your domestic pasture or paddock.
Mm,
Kind of like what you're talking about. She goes. The herd follows.
yeah,
So they're
yeah.
always going towards something that is they're going towards something that is good, that makes them feel good. And if she does need to drive, and it's usually, you know, if you ever get to come out to Utah, it'd be great because just like we could drive 45 minutes from my house and go watch all the wild horses you want. We go an hour the other way and you can watch all the wild donkeys you want. They're
Cool.
all over the
Yeah.
place. But it's interesting because you rarely see the actual like getting after it driving.
Hmm.
But if there is, and it does happen, it'll be a youngster that's kind of getting lined out a little bit,
Yeah.
in
Pushing,
whatever,
pushing a
yeah,
little bit.
yeah, whatever dynamic they are. Usually we see the most driving during weaning when, so like, and you've heard me tell this story probably in the clinics when mules are so pushy and they're young, because in nature, right? They get weaned off naturally. So usually the mother will wean the foal when she's about to have the next foal within sometimes within just a week or two even, but sometimes longer. So she's about to have the other baby. And this foal, whenever it's been scared, whenever that foal has been nervous, it's sided up to its mom. It's it's got next to it and leaned against its mother and looked to the outside or whatever, and that's how it felt safe. Well, the mom says, "Hey, you know what, little guy, it's time to grow up and get a job, get a haircut, and move out of the house here." And so she'll start to drive him off, and she will kick and she'll bite him and whatever. She'll kick him off. It's time to move out because
Yep.
we got another one coming. And it's interesting because that weanling now will go to its other buddies or to other mares or to whatever, and it tries to lean up against them, and they're like, "No, don't touch me, man." Like,
Yeah.
and they'll drive each other off. They don't like it. And so, when I deal with a lot of these adopted Mustangs, and they're rarely pushy. They don't have that pushiness in them. It's not natural. But yet, almost every weekend in a foundation class, people are dealing with these mules and these horses that are so pushy.
Mm,
It's because they get these weanlings, right, that are weaned unnaturally. And I'm not saying to not wean them unnaturally just because it's logical to do that for the mother's sake, because all these mothers, you look at these mothers out on the range and they are poor looking. They're skinny.
hmm.
It's not good.
Are tired.
So they are tired. So we wean them for the mother's health, and which is good. I'm not against it. But it's what happens after we wean them that's the problem. People, oh, well, now we have this cute little weanling. It's so fluffy. It's got that baby hair, it's so soft. And that baby, sure enough, just like it did its mom, it sides up next to you. And we think it's so cute. We think they love us. And pretty soon it's 15 hens and stepping all over us. And
Uh-huh.
so do you see that type of thing with the puppies? Like,
Oh, that's such a good question. Yeah. Yeah. Because for a puppy, usually they do get weaned. Like, mom will start putting her she'll literally put their whole face in her mouth to tell them, "No, no
Mhm.
more of this." But, a lot of the times humans are kinda stepping in to do that for her too. Uh, and so the puppies, when they come home, it's not so much I don't think that they're doing kind of weanling behavior, but everybody pays so much attention to a puppy because 'cause they're so
Yeah.
freaking cute.
Mhm.
And so we love on them, and oh my gosh, everything they do is just adorable. They do a little bark, and you're like, "Oh my god, that's adorable, so cute." Their little squeaks and whatever. They chewing on your hands, and they're chewing on your jackets, and it's just cute. They have little tiny teeth. It becomes not so cute pretty quick. Around 8 months old, it's not so cute anymore. The dog's getting big.
Mm.
And but for him, this is what life has always been. People paying a lot of attention to me, and suddenly I'm not allowed to do the stuff that I could do before, and people are putting rules in place that never existed, and this is not fair because the dog starts to feel a little entitled to what he's got, and he should. That's what he thinks life is supposed to be like because that's what it's always been like. So then around that time is when you start seeing more problem behaviors because he's kind of throwing a fit that he's not getting the kind of thing that he should be getting right now. And usually that's also in the teenage phase for dogs, 7 months to a year and a half old, that they start developing fully, hormones developing and everything. And they're just a little bit more pushy and pushy and pushy. So if you can start early with a puppy, setting boundaries, you'll have less of those issues. But that's really hard for people to do because the puppy is so freaking cute.
Mhm. Same thing with those baby mules, you know? You've seen those baby mules. They're so
Uh-huh.
cute. They got those ears and they're that little baby fur is so soft and they just can do no wrong, you know? And
Yep.
then, yeah, next thing you know, they're not babies anymore. Now they're big and now they step on you and now you cry. You
Yeah.
know, like, it
Yeah.
hurts. And so, yeah,
Yeah,
but
now the
it
puppy jumps on you and you stumble backwards because it's heavy.
I heard somebody say this and this what I'm about to say is really hard to live, Autumn. I'm not saying I'm good at it, but it's so rich with meaning. The saying was, you know, like when it comes to parenting, this person was talking about raising children or raising adults. And they were talking about our
Yeah.
responsibility as parents is to raise adults.
Yeah.
We're not raising children. We're not raising, somebody to stay at the age of 13 their whole life and never grow up and, you know,
Yeah.
live life. We're supposed to raise adults, not children, and that hit me, and I have a hard time with that too because actually, well, you know my girls, Ellie, she's about to turn 12. In fact, when this podcast releases, she'll be 12 now, by the time
Woo.
this comes out. It's just crazy because she's changing into a young woman now, I'm like, and all the little girl stuff we used to do, and, it's not that way anymore, it's kind
Mhm.
of, it's odd. Luckily, I still have little Swayze, so she's my little girl still, you know, but it's hard when you're in those situations, like you're saying, with a puppy or with a young mule or with a child to, in that moment, see the future. Um, a principle that we teach is begin with the end in mind.
Mhm.
So the things that we're doing now, we need to be considerate of how that's going to affect our future.
Yeah,
That's
absolutely. Raise
that's
your
so hard.
dog how you want them. I say this all the time. I borrowed it from you. Treat them how you want them to be.
Mhm.
I say it probably every lesson. You want the dog to be soft on the leash. You want the dog to be listening to you the first time you say something. You want the dog to be rating their energy based on your energy. Treat them like that. Don't expect them to magically be different next time you want something from them if you've never acted that way before. If you've, they can't read your mind. You have to practice this stuff so that they can do it when you actually want it, when you actually need it.
Do you ever hear people? This is my favorite, just personally one of my favorite things that happens. Okay, do you ever hear people say, "Oh, you know better," like they're talking to their dog, like, "Oh, you know better," and they're trying to tell you that, "Oh, well, she knows how to do this,"
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
people say that with their meals all the time. Well, that meal knows better. I'm like, doesn't look like it.
Not right now, he doesn't. Yeah. Yes,
But
and the people who usually say that are usually the hardest people to coach, to be honest, because
yeah, yeah,
they're making excuses all the time for their animal or saying, "Well, he knows how to do that." Well, so they decide that they're not gonna teach it right then because they have already decided that the animal already knows that, so why would they spend time on it now?
yeah,
And that gets you in trouble.
yeah. I'm big on being present because the mule is present and the dog is present. Now, the dogs are more forward thinking than the mule. They have a
Yeah,
the dogs have a much more advanced prefrontal cortex and bigger frontal lobe and all that than the mule. Mules is really small, right? Their frontal lobe is mostly dedicated to motor movement and things like that, but the dog can think pretty far forward, but still, that's not the point. The point is when we're here now, this is what's important right here, right now. So, sure, maybe you've had your dog, heel correctly or sit or whatever obedience we're trying to learn. Sure, maybe you've done that a bunch of times, but it's not happening right now.
right.
So obviously we need to work on it right now. And this comes up so much with the mules and the checklist that we teach because we teach the checklist and we're going to go through this every time. In the beginning, when you're first learning it, it takes forever, right? You can probably liken it to, you teaching your dog how to sit, which is for you is a very, very basic piece, right? Super easy, but it's that foundation that you could begin with, for example, whatever. You can bring up your own things, but our checklist is like that to where we need to do these basic things. In the beginning, it takes a long time, but eventually these will take just seconds, literally seconds. But we need to be
Yeah,
consistent. And if something comes up along the way in that checklist that needs addressing, well, cool. We call that our ceiling for the day or our wall for the day. That's where we're going to work from. That's
yeah,
right now. That's the
yeah.
priority. So, do you see that with the dogs too?
I find that dogs usually are either clued in or they're not. They're either on it and they remember and everything is exactly the same as you've practiced at home, or they're just off in la la land and they're not paying attention at all.
Squirrel land, squirrel zone.
Yeah. They're just way too distracted. Um, so in my lessons, I teach engagement exercises, really basic, simple exercises like the checklist
Mm,
to do when your dog is off in la la land, to give him something really simple to focus on so that he can come back down to earth. Um, so a really basic one is just luring. Take a treat in front of your dog's nose and get him to move a couple steps in the direction of the treat and then give it to him. Can he do that? If he can't do that, you got to back up. You have to go away from that distraction or that environment, whatever it is, because you're not ready for that and you're not going to get him
yeah,
back if he can't do that. um, or a sit from leash pressure is the first thing that I teach in lessons. Just upwards leash pressure, and in the beginning it's hard to teach, just like the checklist is, and the first day of mulemanship, uh, that's
yeah,
tough for them to roll the hinds or whatever. Um, and then once they get that, it becomes just snappy, real easy. So if they can't do that out in a situation, I need to reassess where I'm at and why I'm out here with him. Maybe he's not ready for that yet. And we gotta
yeah.
take it back. You know.
I like that engagement exercises.
Yeah.
Um, have you been around when I've taught our we call it the attention exercise? Are you familiar with that? I
Well,
don't
I
do it
feel like I've heard
everywhere.
it, but explain it to me because maybe I'm wrong.
So basically and I've been starting out and I've just really implemented it this year because I've experimented with it on my own for the last 4 years. I do my own experiments
Yeah.
and then I'll bring it to classes, okay? So I've been experimenting with it for a long time. But basically it's this. I start the groundwork classes. I'll have everybody out there and their objective is just to get the mule in front of them. So the mule and human are facing each other, like you and I are on the screen. And all we're trying to do is keep each other's attention. Now, I leave that detail out and I just tell the participant to keep their mule's attention on them. But really, I'm trying to get the participant's attention on the
That's
mule.
great. That's great.
So
Yeah.
so therefore so I'm like, okay, and we talk about centeredness. So, basically if the mule looks off this way, bring it back. If the mule looks off that way, bring it back. If it backs up, bring it forward. If it goes forward, put it back. Like it's just keeping
Yeah.
it in this box. But yeah, and I say, okay, I want your mule to focus on you, pay attention to you. That's your objective. And like I said, by doing that, the participant has to pay attention to the mule. And that's the real gold. That's the real good stuff is when they really learn to pay attention. So
Yeah, that's great. You're accidentally or uh, reverse psychology teaching them to
yeah.
focus on their animal. That becomes a huge issue in dog training too. When you're focused on something, say you want to go to Home Depot with your dog. You've never been to Home Depot before with him. Okay, well, let's see how it goes. And I'm just going to bring him along and I have to get my thing. So, I'm halfway paying attention to him, but mostly paying attention to where's that thing in the aisle and walking back and forth. And you're not going to get a good quality obedience from the dog if your mind is scattered in 100 different places and trying to actually do the thing that you're bringing the dog along for. You want to do a trial run, a mock run, when you don't actually have an objective to do. Show
Mhm.
him that environment in a way that you're centered with him and he's finding it easier to center with you in an environment he's never seen before, right? Um, until you've done this enough times that you take your dog to a new environment and he's like, okay, it's pretty much the same as everywhere else that we've been. I could take Finn to the airport tomorrow and he would just be fine because I've shown him over and over again, I'm paying attention to you when we're out in public. I'm still watching your behavior. I'm still holding you to a standard. So, pay attention to me. Don't worry about all this other stuff. It's just noise. Who cares?
Yeah. You have to earn it. Like,
Yeah.
and that's the hardest thing to teach. At least for me, it's hard to teach people to really convince them that, hey, well, you have to earn this. You don't just get to have, like you talking about taking the dog to Home Depot. You're not just you get that opportunity. You don't just get to have that.
Yeah.
The dog doesn't owe you. The dog doesn't owe you anything to be obedient at Home Depot. Like, and it's the same thing with mules. Like, so in my business, people want to learn and they want to be better so they can go on a big pack trip and have this big, week-long adventure with their mules or go on a great trail ride or go work cattle or whatever, right? Go show, whatever fits them. But I tell them, you don't just get to have that, and it's not they don't owe you that. You have to
Hmm.
work for this. You got to practice for this. And I like what you said about you being centered. Like you have to center yourself. You have to like take that time and really focus on this and put in that deliberate effort to get good at this.
Yeah.
It's us. We have to get good at these things if we want the dog or the mule to be good at these things too. We can't just be like, well, you you're supposed to do this,
Yeah.
dog, be obedient. Well,
All
if I
right.
don't know
Figure
how
it
to
out.
get him obedient, that's not going to work, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I get kind of the two different personalities or ends of the spectrum that you get in dog training is people who coddle their dogs a little bit too much. They're a little too fluffy with them. And you get this too, and I've seen it many times in
Yep.
our mule clinics. Uh, the people who are a little bit too fluffy with their animals and not holding them to the standard, and then the people who are just military with them
Yeah.
and being way too corrective. And neither one of them is going to get you
Yeah.
anywhere, because if you're being overcorrective, probably you didn't set the animal up to even know what you're talking about when you're correcting them, or you're doing too much and you're missing all of everything else in between. because you're too focused
Yeah.
on that.
Oh yeah, I see I see that so much. Either people are either beating on their mules or they're just like letting them run them over.
Uh-huh.
Can we get something like we don't need to do either one of those things, guys. It doesn't have to be this way, right?
Yeah, yeah,
You know, but
absolutely.
so it comes back to that word fair, you know. How do you be fair? What is fair? I think one of the things that at least in mulemanship that gets in people's way is um losing control of your emotions.
Mhm.
On like so you either get too sad, too excited, too mad, whatever. Um or on the other side, I also think that not having emotions at all is also losing control of them because you
Yeah,
need to have some emotion. I think emotion is good because that will portray, it seems like, especially with the dogs, but it portrays your acceptance of it or your excitement for their success, you know? I wish the mules would be a little bit more like dogs in this sense because like with Molly, she does something we want, she gets so excited. We just talk to her and she gets so excited, right?
yeah,
And there's something like that, whereas, you could sit there and say, "Go, good boy," to the mule. "Oh, you're so cute, good boy." And the mule's like, "No,"
yeah,
but there is, like, with that emotion, there's a feel to it that I think is important. So, in my business, okay, well, when the mule finally does make that turn or that side pass or changes that lead or whatever, or is good to catch or good to saddle, whatever it is good to feel that emotion of excitement, of gladness, of joy, but it
yeah,
can't be too much with the mule. On the mule's end of the spectrum, they're so dang sensitive, and the horses are so dang sensitive that we could be really, really excited. I've seen this happen a lot. The mule does something really good, and we're so excited about it. Good boy, and actually scares the mule off.
yeah. Oh my gosh. I was riding one time with, you met Styles, my big black horse I had,
Yep.
and we we worked on the clinic a lot, cantering because he was a retired, pacing racing standard bred. And one day we were going down the trail. I asked him to canter. He cantered off. I went, "Good boy," and slapped him on the neck, and he lit up and almost bucked me right off.
Oops.
Oops. Oh, sorry, buddy. My
Yeah,
saddle's
that
on him halfway.
Yeah. Yeah, like that excitement, to Styles, that wasn't a reward at all, you know?
No. It's
It's
like,
like,
"What's
"Oh,
going on?"
crap," where sometimes with a dog, they get all hyped up, "Good job,"
Yeah.
they feel it, so, talk about emotions a little bit. Talk about that
Yeah,
spectrum of controlling
absolutely.
emotions, like, how does that work
It
with the dogs?
it all goes back to that feel. I think that's kind of our theme here is, you want the dog to be able to eventually rate their emotion and rate their arousal level, their excitement based on your arousal and excitement. So if I'm all hyped up, I'm expecting my dog to be all hyped up. If I'm relaxed and calm, I want the dog to come back to that, which is harder for them. It's easier for them to go up. It's harder for them to come down, right?
Yeah.
And that's a lot of what I do in my pet dog training world. It's teaching them how to come down. But in order to do that, I have to teach the owners how to come down too,
Yeah.
right? Right? And we just did it
Um,
right here. When
mhm,
I'm telling that story, got all,
mhm,
hyped up and louder, and then we come back down, we have the, more subtle conversation.
mhm.
The same thing happens with dogs, and especially with puppies. Puppies need an outlet for that excitement. So I will open that sort of window of now we're excited, now we're roughhousing and we're wrestling, and I'm going to be making all kinds of noises at you and being crazy. And then maybe the puppy bites me a little bit too hard. I yelp and I'm done. And I bring that energy all the way down and really just, okay, now I'm in a totally different emotional state, and you got to come down with me for that. I'll start stroking the puppy a little bit softer. I'm not mad at him, but just so stroking him a little bit longer, not so much of the pats and loud noises and stuff, just relaxing and being able to bring the puppy up and the puppy down starts to teach the owners how to bring themselves up and then bring themselves down because they struggle with that too, right? People struggle with that all the time. When I have a reactive dog, like a lot of the dogs I see have pretty serious reactivity issues barking at other dogs on the street. They look just vicious and mean, really snapping, snarling at the end of the leash. And I give those owners literally breathing exercises to do on the street with their dog so that they can start focusing on themselves, relaxing their shoulders, not holding tension on the leash, because the animal can feel that even if you don't have tension and you're just tense. There's service dogs that can smell and react to the cortisol levels coming out of your sweat, out of your sweat glands. So why wouldn't your dog be able to pick up on that over enough time? Even if we're walking together on the street and I see something that worries me and I tense up, you feel that, you know, you'll look over at me and say, "What's going on?" Right? The dog can absolutely feel that stuff. And yeah, it is really important, like you said, to have some emotion though. If you have none, I see this a lot in, unfortunately, the working dog world of uh, and not so much sheepdogs and stuff, as they're softer dogs. And there's the concept of a hard and a soft dog is a hard dog will take a correction and just keep going. And he doesn't get his feelings hurt, and a softer dog will get his feelings hurt a little bit.
It's like
Uh,
a border collie is a soft dog.
is a
Absolutely.
Yeah, yeah.
Right.
Sometimes, right? It depends on the dog, but
Yeah.
yeah. Whereas like a Malinois or a big old Mastiff or something. Well, it depends. It really depends on the individual.
Right.
But a hard dog, you can, whack him on the head and he doesn't care. He's just gonna keep going. He might look at you like, "What was that for?" All right, never mind. Just, I want that piece of food on the ground. Um, but you really have to have these emotions. I see these kind of usually big old macho guys trying to maybe impress each other or impress themselves with how serious their dogs are, but they miss all the relationship that you can build there and still have a really cool obedience dog, a really cool working dog. Um, and in the competition obedience circle that I'm in now, I especially see that people think that they have to be this unfeeling robot that their dog will listen to better, and that's just not true. You have to see them for an individual. Look into their soul, a little bit, and recognize them as, this is this is not an object. This is my brother here. This is my friend. So I think you can go really far in either direction, and a lot of the struggle of training either animal is finding the balance where you are um, not reactive, but reacting to what happens, uh, and balancing the animal to not be reactive to what is happening, but react to you in a good way. That can be in a bad way too.
Yeah. We teach, the difference between reacting and responding.
Yeah,
Like a reactive mule, something scares them and they run off. Okay, well that's a reaction. That's just
yeah,
that's pretty natural. These are flight animals and it's a reaction. Responding to that would be what the human would benefit from. Okay, well, instead of running off, let's just, well, what is that? Oh, take a look at it. Okay, all right, let's
yeah.
identify it. Oh, it's just a tarp. Okay, no big deal. All right, that's the
Right.
response
Yeah,
part
I
of
like
it.
that.
And it's hard to, it's easy to talk about. That's hard to do. Really hard
Sure.
to do.
Yeah.
Um, a big part of this though, and we you touched on it just like briefly in the beginning, talking about the wolves. and the domestic dogs and the difference in the facial, the muscles in the face, um, with expressions. So talk about how important it is to be able to read, to truly read the dog's expressions, because like in the mules, it it makes all the difference. And there's so many people that are, they've been around. I've met people that tell me they've rode for 50 years or 60 years. And I go, wow, that's a long time to ignore somebody. Like I'm just, because they're not reading their animals. They have ridden for 50 years. Good for them. But
Yeah,
there's never been that level of mulemanship that I'm striving to achieve. That level of mulemanship that I'm striving to achieve involves being able to communicate. And to be
yeah,
able to communicate successfully, you have to be able to read expressions, because yeah, we don't have the same language as the dog or the mule. I haven't met one that speaks English yet. I'm waiting for the day, you know, but so it comes down to, well, what can we read within each other? And expressions is a huge thing, you know.
yeah,
We know that
yeah,
dogs can recognize our expressions. We know that mules and horses can recognize our expressions. There's cool studies they've done on that. That they read your eyebrows, they read
yeah,
the tightness of your face, your jaw, your lips, all the things. They read it. They read your body, and there's some really cool things there. But talk about reading expressions in the dog.
yeah. It's so, and I get the same thing. I've had dogs all my life. Well, uh, you've had some pretty cool, pretty good dogs then. You know?
It's a nice way to say it out.
Yeah. Uh, because, and usually they come to me because I've had dogs all my life, and this one, I can't, I don't understand him. He's totally different than any other dog I've ever had. We don't get along. He's doing all kinds of these things that are just terrible, and I need help. Well, you've had animals in the past, not that have been just better dogs, but have naturally had more behaviors that you agreed with.
That's a good way of saying it. That's really good. That's awesome,
Right?
Autumn.
Yeah, I truly don't think there's any such thing as a bad behavior. It's just a behavior you like or behavior you don't like,
Yeah.
right?
Behavior is neutral.
Yeah,
Behavior is just behavior. I tell people that the same thing with the mules. The mule doesn't do anything wrong. They also don't do anything right. It's just
yeah,
whether you like it or not.
right.
You know,
And
it, because I might want my mule to change leads, and we're at that lope, but there's other times I don't want them to lope. Well, it's the same exact behavior. They're loping. It's
yeah,
just right now, do I like it or do I not like it? That's all it is. And but that's a hard sell. That's really hard for me to sell to meal people. It really is. When I tell them, okay, guys, I'm going to tell you something that it's probably gonna blow your minds. Most of you probably won't agree with me, but there's no such thing as right or wrong to your mule. Is that as
yeah.
hard to sell in the dog world?
It is because there are behaviors that, especially living in the city, I work mostly in DC, right? That behaviors that people think are bad and should never happen under any context, like barking. But you can't tell a dog to not bark. It's like part of the dog. They're hardwired to do that. They have to do that. So we have to give them an outlet to do that in a context in which that behavior is appropriate. So I tend to go for, because it is a hard sell, go for there's behavior in an appropriate context and behavior in an inappropriate context.
Good.
Right? So, yeah, barking at me while I'm preparing your dinner is an inappropriate context. You're gonna not get what you want out of that, and you might even get punished for that because that's not correct. And I'm gonna help you. If you don't know that that's an incorrect context, I'll help you. But if you know and you do it anyway, you're gonna get punished, or you're gonna get redirected and told to do something else, and you're not gonna get that right now because you asked for it impolitely, right? Um, and oh, I just lost my
I'm not sure whether you taught Sky this or where she learned it from, but I thought it was wonderful. So I mentioned at the beginning, like somebody pulls up to the house, whatever, the FedEx guy, UPS guy, whatever, right? And the dog barks. Well, yeah, at that moment we think, well, don't bark at the FedEx guy, like, But if that was an intruder, we wouldn't
Uh-huh.
want the dog to bark. And so Sky started like, whenever Molly would do that or whatever, or any of our dogs would do that, she'd say, it's okay, good, good girl, whatever, right? And that would calm the dog. And so instead of saying, "Shut up, you idiot," and throwing your shoe at it, well, that's what because it just comes down to behavior, whether we like it or not. If somebody was breaking into the house at 3 a.m.,
Yeah,
we would sure like it if that dog was barking and tearing into it. That would be
right.
great.
That's a great context for that behavior.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely, great job. Um, yeah, that's really true. And a lot of times with that, he really thinks that that guy's trying to break in your house. He doesn't understand that we get packages delivered. He's, you know, I have a client, Ike, he's one of my favorite dogs. He's a real serious guy, just a mutt, straight up mutt, big guy. But he has a very serious job that he's created for himself, which is protect the house from the mailman. And he will do it. So the FedEx guy comes up and he knows exactly what the truck looks like too. He can identify that truck a mile away on the street.
Hmm.
He knows what that is. So he'll start barking at the guy, comes up to the house, and then the guy goes away. He thinks, I did that. I did it. That was awesome. I
I'm
did it.
doing
I
my
got that guy
job.
to go away. Yeah.
That's right.
All right. So the next time the guy comes up, I know how to get that guy to go away. I'll bark at him. And the guy goes away. He doesn't know he
Yeah.
didn't do that.
Hmm.
He thinks he did. Um, but anyway, for him, that's an appropriate context. We have to teach him if we want to teach him that that is inappropriate. We have to show him that, hey, no, look, this is what I'd like you to do instead. Right? When we have a bad behavior, I want to focus on what can we teach him to do instead of that behavior. So we can give him a different behavior to do. So for Ike, we told him to go sit on this bed when he sees the FedEx guy. Go sit over there, or maybe come and tell me that the guy is there. But and then I'll go check. Okay, great job, Ike. Thank you. And you don't have to bark. That's fine. Good job. Instead of him just lighting up at the mailman.
Yeah.
Or when we're walking, because there's no context in which reacting to the UPS guy on the street is appropriate.
Hmm.
Say, no, no, Ike, heel. He's like, that guy was just breaking into my house like
That's
yesterday.
bad.
I hate that guy. But that's not true. Like, but you don't
Hmm.
know that because you don't speak English, so that's all right. I'm gonna help you.
Yeah.
And your job is now stand beside me, and we'll go forward together. And for this dog, we had to kind of pretend and act real serious, like we were kind of in the military. Like we were really watching that guy, but we're standing right here. We're not barking at him, and it gives him something to do.
Yeah.
But anyway,
Replace replacing behaviors is
yeah,
that's so important with mules, dogs, whatever. Instead of saying what not to do, you have to tell them what to do.
yeah,
And in our clinics, I teach people, eh, what do you want? Like, tell me what you want, because I hear so many people, no, don't do that, or that. I tease your mother, and other people about the noise that, you know what I mean?
uh-huh.
Because it's that's like my pet peeve is when people go, eh. Well, because I know what's happening in their brain right now. Like that tells me that that person right now is only focused on the negative behavior, the behavior they don't want. There's no way, there's no way that they are thinking about what they want and making that noise at the same time. Like it can't happen. So,
Uh-huh.
and that's something I've noticed. I've been privileged to be around some amazing horsemen and mulemen and women that are so dialed. And like you're just so dialed with the dogs. You're so good. Um, and it's that ability to focus on what do you want? Think about, picture it, visual, whatever word you want to use, visualize, rehearse, whatever. What do you want? It's as simple as that. And I tell
Yeah.
people this whole mulemanship business is way easier than you think. What do you want? And then, usually I ask that, people go, oh, like, well, see, you don't even know what you want. And you haven't even began yet. Like, what do you
Right.
want from this?
Right.
Now, if you don't know what you want, how's your mule going to know? And then if you're not focused on what you want to have happen, how are they ever going to do it? And,
Yeah.
but again, that's another thing that's really easy to talk about, hard to do. And it takes some serious discipline to have
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
perspective and just be dialed in. And I don't know, and I'm not sure that everybody can get it. I mean, I'm optimistic. Like I'm going to keep teaching it like they can. But it's like you with your dogs. You're doing this business all day long. Every day you're doing it. And that type of exposure gets you good at it. And it's like for
Yeah,
me, the majority of my life is with mules and horses. Like the bulk of my time is spent with the animals. And it takes that time and that um, intentional. I think that's the key is it's intentional time spent with animals that makes the difference. It's
yeah,
not just hanging out at the barn, which is valuable. I think, yeah, good. Go be with your animals. If that's the minimum you can do, just go be with them. Good. Like with the dogs. All right. Well, I'd rather you just be with the dog sitting on the couch than the dog sitting in the kennel. Okay. Like, all right, I get that.
yeah,
But I'm talking about if you really want to make the progress that we're discussing here, is that intentional time spent focusing on what you would want them to do. When they do it, let them know that they did good. That's how they're going to learn.
yep. And that's something I have to remind myself of all the time. I'm coming to coach these people because they struggle with this stuff
Yeah.
and they don't do it all the time. Uh, and a lot of the things that I'm saying are like blowing their minds, and it's very, very basic stuff for me. I'm sure you experience that all the time. And I'm glad to see it come across on their face, just like wonder and amazement that
Yeah.
this is this really makes sense to them, and I love that. And it reminds me every time that you know, I have to see things from their perspective. The dog is a family member to most people. Dog's a family member to me too, but it's a little different. I expect something out of him. My love for him is not conditional, but my reward for him is conditional. My praise for him is conditional.
Yeah.
And some people find it really hard to operate like that, especially around an animal that's around them all the time.
Yeah.
Uh, right. Yeah, treat them
That's
how
a
you
hard
want them to
balance.
be.
That's it.
Yep, that really is it.
That's some good stuff, Autumn. So at the end of all my guest episodes, I ask my guests to give these people going through life, or whether it's with their dogs or with their horses, their mules, to give these listeners some advice. So if you could just share one thing, I mean, you've already given tons. You just you just topped it off with treat them how you want them to become,
Yeah,
treat them how you want them to be. But what else? Is there any other advice you'd like to give?
let's see. I mean, I've got advice for just like actually owning dogs if you want that, but
Sure. Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
all right, I got
Whatever.
a couple. I got
Go
a
ahead.
couple for people who, you know, because I know a lot of, just like we're saying, a lot of horse people are not necessarily dog people. They just have a dog. So if you really want the basic stuff, don't go to dog parks.
Don't go to dog parks.
Don't go to
Okay.
dog parks.
Mic drop.
Yeah, that's it. Bye, Ty. uh, a lot of fighting and stuff happens at dog parks. You can't control anybody
Yeah.
who's in there. You don't know what's going on. Those animals are not centered like we're talking about. You wouldn't just throw your mule in a herd of other animals and just expect them, figure it out. I don't know. See you tomorrow.
Yeah.
Um, you would, at least monitor that a little bit. Uh, Socialize them properly with the world at an early age. And I don't mean interact with every person and every dog you see. Show them the world that you see every day and they might not see ever. They might just be in your house and they never get to see a bus go by, or they might not get to see a person in a wheelchair, um, or the inside of a Home Depot, whatever. You got to show them that stuff so that when they see it and encounter it in life, they're prepared for it. Start at an early age or start right now. Right now. You know, you can do that remedially, but you got to start right now. Uh, and the last one is just enjoy life. Don't let your next goal overshadow what you've got going on right now. Don't lose sight of the animal that you have sitting at your feet because you are thinking about the animal that you are going to have in 2 years, or the ribbon you might get, or Thanksgiving next week, or it's Christmas time now, but Christmas and how the dog's going to behave then. Have that in mind, but don't lose what you've got now because the process is really important. You can find a lot of joy in that if you really focus on
Oh man. So good, Autumn. You're awesome.
it.
It
Thanks.
enjoy the journey. That is so important with whatever people are doing in life. Enjoy the journey of it. We can get so hung up on the future that we forget to notice the wonderful day we're in. So, like you've heard me say, it is the best day ever. So,
Hmm.
got to enjoy it, right? But Autumn,
It
thanks so
is.
much for coming on. This has been an awesome chat. I've learned a lot, and you know, you've been to so many clinics with me, and you know that the majority of people that bring their mules, they got a dog too. So,
Hmm.
um, in the beginning, I'm sure people are wondering, well, how come you have a dog trainer on a mule training podcast? Well, now you guys know because the parallels are just obvious, and the
Yeah.
principles don't change. Although the techniques might be slightly different, and that thing, is different, but principles never change. So
Yep. It's the exact same thing.
I appreciate you doing this for me.
Of course, anytime. I was so excited and loved being on. Love talking to you anytime.
Yeah. Heck yeah. All right. Well, you guys, thanks for listening to this episode. We'd love to hear from you. If you'd be so kind to leave us a review, whether it's on Apple or on Spotify, I want to hear from you. So you can leave a review there, or you can always reach out to me. You can find my information at tsmules.com. Autumn, how can they find your information? Where do you want to send them?
So you can go to the Dog Wizard Chantilly or the Dog Wizard Georgetown. It's where you'll see most of my dog training stuff. And then if you want to just give me a follow on Facebook, you know, I have no problem with that. If you want to check out what I'm doing a little bit more there and a little bit more of my thoughts on dog training, usually you'll find that at the Dog Wizard stuff.
Heck yeah. Well, it's cool stuff. Keep up the posting on social media. I love watching the stuff you do. So,
Yeah. All right. Thanks, Ty.
all right, guys. Thanks for listening today. God bless you, and we'll see you down the road.